Got it.
Good afternoon, Paul.
Good afternoon, Sean. How are you?
Yeah. Do you want to give us a quick run through of who you are and why you might be talking to me today?
My name is Paul Milroy. I'm from a company called Guthrie and Craig. So Guthrie and Craig split into two parts: management services, which cover health and safety, and then the training division, which cover face-to-face training and online training as well. So the health and safety support and health and safety consultancy and training in a nutshell.
So I know you, Paul. I've known you for a number of years, and we were chatting the other day about health and safety and pest control. I in work, and then I got to pest control, and we're having a natter, and there's a couple of things which I hate seeing. I see it all the time on Facebook and social media, etc. Talking about it. And the first thing I wanted to bring up was wearing PPE. So what I see on a daily basis is that people will be dealing with honeybees, and they come to take a video, and they'll take the hood down. They'll take a video with the hood down to like show like that they are the bee whisperer or whatever it is. They are professional because they know when to put a PPE on and when not to put not to put the PPE on. And it just knocks us, and I don't know whether I'm right or wrong for that to knock me. Because my gut feeling is if you stood around 20, 30, 40, 50,000 stinging insects, then you should put your hood up. By all means, do a video, but put your hood up. Do you know what I mean? Like, why demonstrate? What better way to show you're unprofessional than to not wear your PPE? Do you know what I mean?
That's right.
Yeah. Where do we stand with that then?
So from a risk assessment point of view, you need to do a risk assessment. So I'm sure there's two different kinds of risk assessment. There's the documented risk assessment. So if you employ 5 or more people, that includes company directors, that includes what's called LIMB workers, so labour-only subcontractors. You need to have a documented health and safety policy and documented risk assessments. If you employ less than that, so Sean, if you're a sole trader, or if you employ 1 or 2 people, you still need to do a risk assessment. So we all do dynamic risk assessments every day. You know, the first dynamic risk assessment that we learn to do is the Green Cross Code. That's why we don't get knocked over, because we stop, we look, we listen. So you're talking about 20, 30, 40, 50,000 stinging insects. Is there a risk to your health from that? And if there is, so being stung by that amount of bees, you know, it hurts me anyway, being sort of stung by 1. So if you get stung by multiple bees, it's a trip to hospital, you know, potentially. It could be quite serious. Do you know that you've got an allergy to bee stings or not? So you need to follow the hierarchy of risk control. So the hierarchy of risk control starts with eliminate. Can you eliminate the bees? No, because you're working with them. Can you substitute them for something else? Can you put engineering controls in place? No, you can't do any of those things. You need to sort of come into close contact with the bees. And the next one is there's the two bottom of the hierarchy is administrative controls. Administrative controls covers training, covers risk assessments, covers safe systems of work. And then the last resort is the last control measure is PPE. The reason that it's the last one, or they're the last 2, is because they rely on human intervention. So if you were to eliminate the bees altogether, you wouldn't get stung because there's no bees. If you put engineering controls, can be in sort of physical guards, physical barriers, you know, that's not gonna work. But they're less reliant on people down the bottom. Like you said, people are taking their mask off, you know, they're taking their hood up and exposing themselves to bees, thinking that it's not going to happen to them, it only happens to other people. So that's why it's the bottom of the hierarchy, because it relies on human behavior and human traits. And you've just said exactly that. To get what they perceive as being a better video or better image for social media, then they're taking their mask off without considering the risks.
I just worry about it because I think it sets the wrong narrative. You know, you've got people who've never dealt with bees who then watch it and think that that's the standard to aim for, that you can take your PPE off. But then I also worry for their business, because I think if I was a big firm looking for someone to do my work and he was stood there without wearing PPE around them, But I want that person on my site, and the answer is probably no.
Yeah, I mean, the HSE definition of an accident, an unplanned event that can result in injury to yourself, property, plant, the environment, or loss of a business opportunity. That's text is in the HSE's definition of an accident. And if you put a picture on, a post on social media, a video on social media where you're not wearing your PPE around bees, like I've said, if a large organization wants to engage somebody, they're going to look less favorable on that. We've got to be professional people in business. People have got to be careful what they post on social media. I see many pictures of people working on roofs, doing fascias and guttering, and they're hanging off a ladder and they're putting this on social media. Just finished this picture today, and they're unsafe working practices, and it's not doing any good. And people have been prosecuted by the HSE through pictures that they've seen on. People have been prosecuted by the HSE through putting pictures on social media. They're easy to track. It's easy to track somebody down because they've put their name or their company on. And just because you've got less than 5 employees, you can still be prosecuted for breach of health and safety legislation.
So what would be the repercussions of HSE saying that and run the prosecution on you? What's the outcome there?
So there can be, so for an example, there's a HSE prosecution there. You can go on the HSE prosecution's website. It's a public directory. You could go on there, Sean, you could Google bees or beekeepers or, and find out this. But there was a guy who turned up.
It's going to be a lot of lads Googling bees and pests now.
There will be, yeah. There was a guy, I mean, this wasn't on social media, but it was from a photograph, who turned up. You've had it before, Sean. Somebody knocks on your door and says, can I chop a tree down? Can I trim your hedge? Things like that, jobbing gardeners. Somebody engaged him and said, yes, you can chop a tree down in the garden. So he went and got his chainsaw and his ladder out of the van and climbed up the ladder. And he was resting half on the ladder and half on a tree limb using a chainsaw. You shouldn't be using a chainsaw off a ladder. The guy next door, who was a chainsaw trainer, took a photograph of him, took a photograph of the guy in the act, took a photograph of his van and sent it to the HSE. And the HSE fined him £2,500 for breaches of health and safety legislation and £2,500 in costs. And that example there is probably going back about 5 or 6 years. So it goes to show you that one man in a van with I think he had a labourer with him as well, then £5,000 is a lot of money for somebody who's, making a living that way. And that could happen with, beekeepers, with people who do bee removal, for example, if they haven't got the right access at height equipment, if they're hanging off a ladder, or they could be prosecuted.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I think there'll be some, there'll definitely be some Googling going on there. Yeah, pest control, I think most of the pest controllers I know are sort of small businesses. And health and safety is kind of one of them things that maybe some people see it as a necessary evil. I think some people see it as an absolute hindrance. And others see it as something to help you move forward. I would like to think that we are definitely in that bracket. I don't think we always get it right, but we always try. What advice would you give to anyone in pest control, specifically with regards to health and safety? What do you see people doing right and wrong in industry? What's the easy win, the low-hanging fruits that they can grab, and how can they use it to benefit their business rather than harm their business?
Yeah, health and safety, Sean, it's about common sense. Use your common sense. Would you climb up a ladder and sort of overhang to try and reach something? That some people think it's not going to happen to them. Some people think that health and safety is for large construction companies, to use as a stick to beat people with, or you need a health and safety manager. You don't. You boil it right down. Like I said before, the majority of the people in your industry and the people that are going to employ less than 5 people, so they don't need to document it. They think they're under the radar, but is it safe? If something's hot, are you going to touch it to find out if it's hot? No, because it's hot. Are you going to climb up that ladder? Are you going to climb into that confined space? So you sort of apply the common sense. Think about it first. Do a dynamic risk assessment. Again, going right back to what I said at the beginning, the Green Cross Code is the first risk assessment that we learn, that we implement, and we implement it every day of our lives when we're crossing the road. So it's just about getting that mentality. You don't need to spend thousands of pounds on health and safety management systems or risk assessments or training. You need to be competent at what you do, and you need to apply your common sense.
Yeah, I always say, like, the thing with health and safety is it's only there because someone died.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not there because someone got a little paper cut, is it? It's there because someone died.
Yeah.
Doing what they're doing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when it was introduced, the Health and Safety Work Act 1974, it was prior to that, health and safety legislation was about predominantly protecting the employers, because they couldn't see the mill workers, the mill owners and the dock owners go out of business for being prosecuted because somebody in their industry had died, because they employed sort of plenty of people, where the act is to protect everyone. It's to protect the employers, to keep them on the right side of health and safety legislation, is to protect employees as well. And if you're a company director, you're an employee of your own company.
So that you kind of grabbed me next one there. The thing which always worries me when you've got someone working for you is that something bad happens to them, because the impression I'm under is that I could go to jail for that if I'm asking them to do something unsafely. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So I just spoke about the fine. So the HSE have a sort of league, if you like. So you start off with fees for intervention, it's called. So the HSE could come along, say you're doing something not quite right, Sean. Nobody's going to get immediately hurt, but it's an unsafe working practice. The HSE would offer you some guidance on that in the form of a letter, but because they're intervening, then they would fine you for that at an hourly rate. So that the current hourly rate for fees for intervention is £165 an hour, plus VAT. And then you go up from that to an improvement notice. So you are doing something wrong that needs to improve. They'll issue you with a notice, and you get a given time period to improve that. And again, that would come along with the fees for intervention. And then you've got prohibition notices, which means you must stop carrying out that activity until it's been made safe, or the working practices are being made safe. Then the top one is a prosecution. So in a magistrate's court, you can be fined unlimited now. Magistrate's court fines used to be capped at £20,000. That was removed a few years ago. So you can be an unlimited fine and up to 2 years in prison from a magistrate's court. And if you go to Crown Court, it's unlimited fines again, and the jail sentence is determined by the judge.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they do happen again. The HSE prosecutions page, I'm sure you and a few other people will be going on there having, looking for bees. Just Google bees or beekeeping as a you're doing it now.
Yeah,
do that as a search in the search bar, and it might bring up some prosecutions or prohibition notices for people who've been working with bees. Either
just
beekeepers or just type in HSE prosecutions, hit Google. It should come up in the first sort of 2 or 3. Make sure it's a HSE website that you're looking at. There might be some other third-party register of conviction, so it's a public directory. I think you can search by postcode. You can search by company name.
It brings up loads of them, like honeybees and biocides, honeybee toxicity, investigation procedures, bees and non-targets. All right, so you just flick through them.
Yeah, like I say, you can search by postcode. You can search by individual's name, search by company's name. There's various different options to search. Yeah.
Right. Wow.
So you'll find some interesting information on them. Sure. Like I say, I've never personally searched for bees, or pest control on there, but I've searched for companies before on the pages.
I tell you, there's another thing that I've just spotted on there, which has come up, and I think it's a little bit different, but it was something I wanted to talk to you about. It's got that HSE issues gas detector safety alert. Another thing that we do quite a bit of is drain surveys. I wanted to have a chat with you about manholes specifically. I know the clusters were under the working at height regulations.
If you're standing next to working at height, is working at any height where a fall could cause injury, and even if it's sort of at ground level, below ground level, if you're standing next to an excavation or an open hole, you're working at height. But if you're going into the drain, I don't know if you're going actually into the drain or you're putting equipment into the drain, then you're obviously working in a confined space then as well. So
So what do we need for that then? Because we do put, to be fair, I tend to use cameras which are pushed from outside into the drain,
Yeah.
and we're not in there. But there are times when you'll be putting 4-inch bungs in or whatever it is. Some of the lads will be putting rat valves in and what have
Yeah.
you. What do they need to be mindful of with that when they're doing it?
So anything entering the confined space.
Right.
So if you are in a drain, what's likely to come into it? So confined space. So if there's any reasonable foreseeable risk, a fire explosion, loss of consciousness, asphyxiation or drowning. So if there's water likely to come in, that's where you get the drowning. And you've just mentioned the gas detector. So depending on what kind of drain it is, the risk of methane gases and things like that being in there. So you need to consider that as part of your risk assessment. How are you going to get out of the confined space if there's an accident or incident, if you injure yourself? So you should have a rescue plan in place as well. And also you should be supervised. If you're in a confined space, you should be supervised by somebody who's outside of the confined space so they can rescue you. You may have seen the ground workers before, or people working in drains, where they've had a tripod set up. So the guy in the hole's got a lanyard and harness on, and they can sort of basically just wind him out if something happens, if he's incapable of getting him out himself because he's become unconscious.
We're looking at doing that. I can't remember what the actual course is, because there's a number of levels of confined space training, isn't there?
There is, yeah. So confined space entry training, it'll be the one to do. I think there's a training provider close to where you live who do that, practical confined space training. But if you those things I've just mentioned, if you enter in a loft space, for example, which you could be doing,
Yeah.
You've got to see, is there a reasonably foreseeable risk of fire, explosion, loss of consciousness, asphyxiation or drowning? So that's why lofts are considered to be low risk confined spaces.
Right.
Whereas drainage would be a high
Yeah.
risk, because you've got the risk of asphyxiation, you've got the risk of drowning.
I was talking to I went on a training course actually with a bloke, and he was talking about, he was a drained guy through and through, and he said every year they have a couple of deaths. And I was like, a couple? He said, yeah. He said, you never get one death, you get two. You get the guy who passes out in the manhole, then you get the man who goes in to try and get him out, who passes out the manhole. So you don't get one dead guy, you normally get two.
Yeah.
Like, really? He said, yeah, it happens. I don't think it's the most regular thing in the world,
No,
but I think it still occurs, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Then the other thing I wanted to have a chat with you about was asbestos. We've done a little bit with asbestos, where it turns up. In fact, I actually put a line on it on a post the other night. There was a lad talking about pitch fibre in a drain, repairing pitch fibre, and I'm aware that a lot of that is asbestos related. So it'll be easy to try and do a drain repair and start cutting it, and you've got asbestos. We come across it doing honeybee removals all the time. Artex sealants, soffits, places like that.
They're very, very common places to find asbestos, those.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, any building built or refurbished before 2000 could contain asbestos. So blue and brown asbestos, the higher risk of the three main ones, were banned in 1985. White asbestos, the lower risk of the three, wasn't banned until 1999, so it still could have been used commonly in Artex, textured coatings, for example, soffits, fascias, your corrugated cement roofs that you see, which also would come with that, would be your guttering and your downpipes.
Tiles.
So
Come across it with
tiles, sealant tiles, plastic floor tiles, vinyl floor tiles, sealant tiles, loft insulation. You're going into lofts. How old's the house? Is the loft insulation in the house that was put in before 2000? Does it contain asbestos? So it was very widely ranged, could have been used in absolutely anything. Toilet seats and cisterns contained asbestos because of the high tensile strength of it. It was used for insulating sound, so modular built buildings. So built in the 70s, comprehensive schools, doctors' surgeries, wings of hospitals, sort of modular built buildings. Line them with asbestos insulation boards to create a fire break, to minimize the noise from the next unit. So if it's a school or if it's a council flat or anything like that, you're minimizing the noise as well and the spread of fire. And so that was one reason why it was used. It's mostly resistant to oils, to acids. It's good insulating properties, and that's why it was used. So that's why you can find it in everything. Brake pads used to contain asbestos. that, the list goes on.
So what would be the say we go and we do a job and we cut a soffit or a ceiling or a pitch fibre pipe, etc. Unaware of what it is, but it turns out to be asbestos. We cut through it. Clearly, the health implications, I don't think we need to batter on about it, can kill you. But what would be how would that affect us on a practical boots on the ground level if we've actually haven't had a survey done, didn't know, cut through it, house is inoculated with asbestos dust? What happens then?
So if you're in a property, so if it's a council owned or a housing association owned property, then there should be an asbestos register in place. There should have been an asbestos survey and asbestos register in place. If it's a private property, then there won't be. The house I'm in now could be have been built long before then, and I'll be oblivious to the risks as the man in the street. So I wouldn't know. So that's when I would be relying on you. But if you come into my loft and you suspected it was asbestos, stop working, isolate the area, don't let anybody else in the area, and contact somebody, contact a local authority or an asbestos surveying or removal company. Any commercial premises that you go into, Sean, should have an asbestos register in place. That's a legal requirement to have one of those. So you should know then where the asbestos is, because asbestos, getting rid of it's expensive process. So people will just leave it in, encapsulate it. If you're in a room, if you're in an office building and the walls are asbestos insulation board, if nobody drills them, if you don't release the fibers, you can't breathe them in. But if you accidentally release them, yeah, I mean, that's again, it's another prosecution to have one of your employees, knowingly disturb asbestos. So if there was an asbestos, if it's an asbestos survey is being done and you choose to ignore that and just send somebody in, or you pull the old, it'll be okay, it's just a little bit of asbestos, then you could be. But yeah, the health implications, obviously get checked out at hospital. There's no safe exposure limit to asbestos. So it depends how it's made up. The three main asbestos is being, blue and brown, like I said, banned earlier, then white. You wouldn't know what color it was because it's being processed into something else.
So we're not that right. So it's not like if I find blue asbestos, it would be a blue board.
Yeah, it wouldn't be blue. Yeah, because it's more a grey color anyway. So yeah, if it could be a ceiling tile, it could be loft insulation. So I mean, asbestos awareness training will sort of tell you what it could contain. But if you approach a building that was built before 2000 or refurbished before 2000, always have it at the back of your mind that it could contain asbestos.
And then working at height, I think that's the one where I believe it or not, Paul, you'll be proud of it. It's actually did an IOSH course, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, good eye.
And it actually made us scared of heights for a while.
Right, yeah.
Because I was saying the health and safety executive can predict every year how many deaths they are going to have in industry. And they can tell you how they're going to occur. They just can't tell you where or when. So they'll say like this year we're expecting to have 232 deaths. Or 230 deaths. 170 of them will be through working at height. 150 of them will be through working at height on commercial buildings. They know what's going to happen, and that's why they're so hot on it.
It's based on statistics, isn't it? So your figures are a little bit high there. The sort of average fatalities in the UK workplace, around about 140, 144. Quite a few years now, 5 or 6 years.
144 people a year die at work.
Yeah, die at work. Yeah, that's not road traffic accidents or anything like that. That's you going to work, Sean, in the morning with your bait and going to work and plan on coming home the later that day, and you don't. Yeah, and the main areas of that are falls from height, interaction with plant and machinery, so people get knocked over or people falling into heavy plant. But yeah, falls from height. People who haven't done a risk assessment, going back to the things like I said before, using a ladder incorrectly, not thinking of the risks. You do get cases where scaffolding collapses for whatever reason, but predominantly it's people taking shortcuts, it's people taking risks, people walking across fragile roof surfaces without considering that they could fall through it. Yeah, and incorrect access equipment or not unsuitable and sufficient access equipment.
Wow. Right. Okay.
I'm sure you and guys on the call have used plasma towers before, and maybe probably not fixed scaffolding because it's short duration. So yeah, your mobile scaffolding towers, that have used them before because it's a safe way of access. Some you might even have used cherry pickers or scissor lifts in the past to access areas. It's based on risk assessment. It's based on the reasonably practicable risk. What's the cost of getting a cherry picker in or a scissor lift in compared to the cost of an aluminium tower? It's going to be less to get an aluminium tower.
I think the problem is, Paul, isn't it, that a lot of the lads who are one-man bands feel like margins are squeezed.
Yeah.
When you're charging someone 300 quid to do a job, but then there's 500 quid's worth of cherry pick.
Well, that's right. Yeah. And a lot of the times the person that you're doing the job for won't understand that. They'll just want the job to be done. And if somebody's prepared to do it without factoring in access equipment, then they're going to win that job until ultimately something goes wrong.
Yeah, we see it a lot with well, I think everyone watching this in the pest control industry will have seen numerous examples of unsafe working at height practices. And sometimes you don't even know it's unsafe, do you? We done a level 3 ladder course the other day at Grounder Ridge. And honestly, I walked away. I felt like I'd let myself down through not doing it before. Like when we're doing, I was thinking, like the amount of risks I'd been taking.
Yeah.
Totally unaware that there was a safer way to do it. And then you go and do it and you're like, all right, got you. Got you. That's what we need to do from now on. So luckily we've got it now. But a lot of people, I think, are probably unaware of the risks that they are under. But yeah, the worries are real, aren't they? If you're going to spend 2 years in jail
or worse, fall from height, life-changing injuries, falling from height, then your employer or potentially you might face, 2 years in prison being fit and healthy is better than a lifetime in a wheelchair. You don't have to fall very far to have life-changing injuries. If you do working at height training, most trainers will show examples of people whose lives have been affected by working at height.
I gave a talk the other day on honeybee removals, and like I used to hate what I thought was scare tactics, when people show you these injuries and give you these all that, like, what do you call it, scenarios and that.
Yeah.
But actually, when I come to give that talk, the only way of getting the point across is to actually give those scenarios and those pictures and those worries and those.
It is, yeah. Because it always happens to somebody else, Sean, or it'll be okay, man. I'm only up the ladder for 10 minutes. What's the worst that can happen? You can land on your back, land on your head. You can, if you fall wrong, then there's a video you can find on YouTube of a guy who was doing a roofing job. He was only 10 foot up a ladder. He fell 10 foot off a ladder. 24-year-old, spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is it certainly changed the way that we deal with ladders. It's a bit more cumbersome, but you are safe in dealing with them, for definite. If anyone's watching this, highly recommend you go and do it. Highly recommend it. So have a free plug then. What courses do you offer on the online portal, and what?
So we've got an online training portal that covers a wide variety of training specifically for yourselves. There's an online training course for confined spaces. So like I said before, the lofts, you can do an online course for entering lofts because it's a low risk confined space. Working at height, general working at height awareness. So you are aware of the risks, but it doesn't only tell you what the risks are. It tells you how to do the job safely. It tells you the options on access equipment. Manual handling is a sort of basic one. COSH, the control of substances, hazards to health. You're using substances. You can see some behind you there, Sean. How will they affect you?
Because of that training, Paul. If the lads came on your online course and they did the COSH course, will it assist them filling out a COSH form?
It'll give them some guidance on how to do that. Yeah. So you get the material data sheet and then you turn that into a COSH assessment. Yeah.
Because again, there's a general rule when we do contract work, we'll leave cost assessments with them there and understanding the importance of them and how to do them correctly. Because I think the reason why people don't do in this industry, I'm pretty confident that the reason people don't do stuff, a lot of it is probably because they don't know how to do it.
Yes.
How to fill in a cost report properly. No one stands over you and shows you or tells you.
No. Yeah, a lot of the bulk of our clients, Sean, are small companies, small, medium companies. I would think probably around about 25 employees, 25 employees. That's the sort of average size. And we have a lot of companies that only employ 6, 7, 8 people. And these guys have either worked for local authorities, you know, if they're involved in landscaping or fencing, they've been on the tools and they've decided to set up a business. Then go to a bank and you'll have a business plan and they'll tell you what money you need and what insurances you need. But how much do they tell you about health and safety? You know, if you don't know, if you've worked for a larger organization or a local authority, you should be aware of risk assessments and you should be aware of training because it should have been inbred into you. But if you just decide to start a business tomorrow doing something you've never done before, or you haven't been involved in industries or companies that have got risk assessments, you don't know, do you? You know, say to the man in the street, show him when you're out tomorrow, excuse me, do you know what a cost assessment is? He'll not know, he'll not understand what it is. Nobody, you've got to find out. But, you know, going back to prosecutions before, if you do get in front of a judge and you just turn around and say, I'm sorry, but I didn't know what a cost assessment was. Ignorance is no defense in health and safety law. It's up to you to find out. But where do you go to find out? I mean, the HSE website is a great source of free information. It's probably not the best website you're going to spend half a day looking at, but there's some great information on there. And go onto the HSE website and just Google beekeeping or Google pest control. It'll have examples on there. Google COSH, they've got a COSH essentials page. And it's about giving you information and helping you. Yes, the HSE will prosecute you through the courts like I spoke about before, but that's not their ultimate goal. It's to keep people safe and make sure companies are keeping their staff safe. So you can have a look on there, loads of great free information on the HSE website.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So go on, I interrupted you there. What other courses you got? So you've got COSH. We've
got a wide range of courses. Trying to think of it, so it will be specifically to pest control. I mean, we've got asbestos awareness on there, allergy awareness. Do people know about sort of the allergens? Firefighting, you know, basic fire awareness, probably not. The COSH one that I've already said. There's a bit of a background on electrical safety. You might be working in or around and close to electricity, fire extinguishers, fire marshal training, an introduction to risk assessment. So you know what risk assessment is about. Just because you don't have to document them if you've got less than 5 people, your clients, depending on who you work for, might expect you to have one because it fits in with their process. So you need to produce risk assessments. We've got the food hygiene courses on there, but that's probably more for beekeepers than pest control. PPE, there's a one on PPE, Sean. You know, Marjorie spoke about PPE before and people not wearing it. The importance of PPE, the training you need around PPE, how to look after the PPE yourself and what your responsibilities are. So that's just a few examples. I mean, slips, trips and falls, working at height, working in confined spaces. Higher end courses, working safely. There's a working safely course that's on there that covers your general ones, your manual handling, your working at height, things like that. So it's sort of classed as a premium course. That's just a few sort of examples of what's on there.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a few people who'll have a look. I'm probably not speaking out of turn here. I think you said you're thinking about doing a discount for maybe some of the UK pest controllers members, and if they needed a asbestos awareness course or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our courses, you go on the website, our courses retail at £25 plus VAT, which is competitively priced against people who provide similar quality courses. All our courses will be endorsed by a professional association. Some of them are endorsed by ROSPA, for example, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents. But for any of your members, I'll give you, Sean, I can give you a discount code where you would get 20% discount off that. So you get it for £20. If you know people want to buy multiple courses, we could have a look at discounting those as well. And that's a discount code. You go onto the website, you pick the course that you want, you pay via PayPal. If people want to do what's called a business account, where I would just set it up for you and you would pay by invoice, then that's an option as well. But
yeah,
I'll options there.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Just out of interest, Paul, how did you get into health and safety?
I was working in a factory. I worked my way up to supervisor level. And when I started a new company in the automotive industry, Sean, there's a huge automotive employer in close proximity to where me and you both live. I was working for one of their suppliers, one of their tier 1 suppliers. And my role developed into learning or delivering health and safety training, as in manual handling training and risk assessment awareness. And the company sent us on a course. So I was doing a little bit of health and safety as my role of a supervisor. I got made redundant in 2007. And because I was at supervisor level from the automotive industry, I was fast tracked into training. And no matter what training I asked for, they always seemed to wanted to steer us towards an EBOS general certificate. And as it turned out, when I went onto the course, there was about 13 or 14 of the guys who had been made redundant as well, and we're all on this course. So they obviously bought a job lot. I met a guy who had his own consultancy business, and a few months, 2007, we were in recession. I couldn't find a job. I met him for a coffee one day, and he offered us a bit of part-time work, and then it just went from there. So I've done a few more qualifications and training, and up to a postgraduate diploma that I finished a couple of years ago.
Really?
So yeah, fell into it basically. A little bit of a push, but more of a fall than a push. Yeah.
Right. What's the worst thing you've seen in health and safety?
Luckily, I haven't seen very much personally, but I think there's a couple that sort of hit home. There's an old IOSH video where a guy's these companies at Coca-Cola, part of their cleaning, their lines was to mix 2 chemicals together, but that was mixed automatically. But if the machine broke down or got stuck, they'd mix them by hand. But if you put chemical A in before chemical B, you were fine. If you put B in first and then A, it would create a gas cloud. And the guy lost his sight through sort of mixing chemicals in the wrong way. And the other one, Google Jason Anker. So Jason Anker was the guy that I was talking about before. He went to help his father-in-law out, who had a roofing business, one Sunday morning. I mean, this is obviously, you're going to see him talk about this, Sean. He fell 10 foot from a ladder. Anker, A-N-K-A-R, A-N-K-A-R, Jason Anker. And he's built up a career by going around talking to people, you know, in industry about the dangers of working from height. So at 24-year-old, he ended up being paralyzed from the waist down because he fell 10 foot from a ladder.
Right. Right. Yeah, well, I guess
I've got a few colleagues, you know, a few people who do subcontract work for us now and again, and they've investigated. We do accident investigation. They've investigated fatalities on construction sites and petrochemical site. So touch wood, I haven't had to do that. So I haven't seen that side of it, or the you know, the Jason Anker thing. If you like, say, if you watch that video. I've seen stupid things. I've seen plenty of people standing on the roof of vans to trim high hedges, and I've seen people with, you know, sort of step ladders on the tops of vans and things like that. Things that you just wouldn't think about doing. Somebody with a decent level of common sense wouldn't think about putting a ladder on top of a, you know, a 0.2 mil van roof.
You'll love this. I was showing a picture the other day, and the guy had a alley tower, which it appeared to be put together correctly. It got up to the right height. Once he'd put it on top of acro props,
right,
4 legs, he'd slid it into the acro prop to get it to where he wanted it to be. I was like, that's it's ingenious, but I'm not sure it's relatively safe, because it's obviously at the bottom and there's no stability.
It's a little bit Fred Dibner in it, a little bit sort of Fred Dibner. For the older people watching this video.
No, Fred Dibner, he definitely wouldn't have got away with it in his day.
He wouldn't, no.
Yeah, but he
didn't get hurt. He was assessing the risk, wasn't he? He was assessing the risk of what he was doing. I think he was taking a few risks as well. But
I think that's the problem, isn't it, with health and safety? There's not that many people hurt. There's not that many people killed, etc. So you have this feeling that it will never happen to you.
But it always happens to somebody else, Sean. It always happens to somebody else.
I'm shocked.
That's what people think.
I'm shocked that there's 140 people every year who die at work.
Yeah.
it's enough to that for me is enough to genuinely make me consider again everything that we do. I think I don't want to give the impression that we don't take it seriously. We do. But that being said, like the thought of someone not going home to their family because of something I asked them to do is quite a sobering thought, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Paul. It's been
no problem, Sean.
I'll for anyone watching, I'll probably bang a thing on. I'll put the code on the Facebook post, and if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they get in touch with you, Paul?
You can drop us an email if you want to. You can drop us an email at paul.milroy@guthrieandcraig.co.uk.
Right. Okay. And there's
searches on LinkedIn or Facebook. There's not many Paul Milroys about. It's not a common name.
I tell you one
or
thing.
Or contact you, Sean, and you can send me details. You've got all my details.
I tell you the other thing I forgot to mention. We were going to mention. Kind of covered it a little bit. When we do honeybee removals, you can imagine one of the first questions that the homeowner asks you is, "Can I have some of the honey?" Because they have a sentimental attachment to the honey that is between the walls or within the chimney with the carcinogenic dust up the sides. And there are people out there who are doing them who will, heard of the more unscrupulous, who are processing that honey and putting it into food chain.
Right.
Down to the people who will give someone a small amount of it as like because they wanted it, through to the you're not getting a drop, which is where we stand on it. It gets burned, it's gone. What would be the repercussions of being caught either processing it and putting it in the food chain, or allowing a homeowner whose house it was to have some?
Yeah, well, you're going to have a duty of care for that honey. So if you're a beekeeper, that honey's produced under relatively safe conditions in terms of food hygiene. If it's come out of the void of a house that could contain all sorts of nasties, but you might not see it, it's more likely to create an injury. So if you're doing that commercially, which you would be because you're being paid, you should be food hygiene trained. So level 2 food hygiene training covers you for handling food stuffs and food substances. There's a level 1 course, but that tends to be for pre-packed food. Level 2 is for producing. So there's level 2 for a food hygiene course for manufacturing, which it would be if you're turning that into honey, you're manufacturing it. Because, Sean, if you come into my house to remove a bee's nest and I come in after you've finished, the risk to me from those bees will be minimal because you'll keep it segregated from me. So if you're in my loft, you would tell me to stay downstairs, stay in a sitting room, keep the door shut. That's creating a barrier. So if we go back to the hierarchy of control I mentioned before, we're not eliminating the bees, but we're putting engineering controls in place. We're putting a barrier in between me and the bee. You then give me that honey that could have something in. You've then introduced something to me that's poisonous, or so it's the same as you saying to me, come here with your shorts and your flip-flops on and have a look while I release all these bees while you're pee-peed up. That the effect on me there is potentially the same as me then eating that honey that's come from it's got asbestos in, or I mean fiberglass insulation, or like you say, cement dust that's got lime in, or anything like that can be contaminated because that honey hasn't been produced in a honey producing environment, which beekeepers would do.
It's quite funny, because I say beekeepers and they'll flip the roof upside down and they'll turn the boxes so not even the grass touches the honey. Now we're like spraying on the cement dust and all sorts going all over it. Soot over the chimney, and they're like,
I mean, if it's an old house, a bit of asbestos on there, bit of lead, just get it mixed in with your
stuff.
and spread it on your toast. No, not good.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
No bother, Sean, anytime.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have a catch up at some point in the future. It's quite interesting, I don't know. I'm in two minds whether to tell you this or not, and I won't say the name on video. But one of our friends, close friends, you'll probably guess who it was involved in an incident where there was a prohibition notice ordered. They were doing some work at height, and they were in the bucket of the load all on a fall.
Right.
And someone walking past. Do you know the story or not?
I don't know, but I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I think you will. Yeah. I giggle, but it's not funny.
Yeah.
A guy was walking past and shouted at them and said, "Hey, that's dangerous. You shouldn't be doing that." To which the person, not our friend, the guy who was with, said, "It's got nothing to do with you. Just disappear and do one." So he did. He disappeared. He done one. He rang the HSE, and the HSE come out like immediately. Like it's not. They don't come tomorrow, the day after, do they?
No, it's the same as phoning the police. They are the, people say that the health and safety police. They will come out.
Oh yeah, they came out like super quick, caught him doing it, and just banged a prohibition notice on him. And I don't know if this is true or not, but my understanding is that his insurance went up absolutely astronomically because he'd had a prohibition notice.
It will do, it will do, because like your employees' liability insurance, it's there to protect your employees. But does anybody know an insurance company who like paying out?
Oh no, they don't pay out.
If you're doing something unsafe, then your premium's going to go because there's more chance of them having to pay out.
Yeah.
Like I say, Sean, that company isn't public it's public facing because of what it does, but it's not. You haven't got a main road driving past it that somebody could see it from a main road. It's in close proximity to a major road network, but you can't see it from.
You all think they're the right person, but it wasn't actually there. He was
right. Yeah. But anybody can phone up, and people do. People just walk down the street. So no, that doesn't look unsafe. I'm going to phone the HSE, or I'm going to phone somebody. Yeah, you get people do it. Yeah.
I'm just not that way inclined. I kind of giggle, think he's probably going to kill himself and drive off and not worry anymore about it. But you don't realize that
you've got to be careful. Sometimes I've mentioned it to people. Should you really be doing that? And they'll sort of stop and look at you, and you just say, "Look, I'm just telling you that it's an unsafe act and it might hurt yourself." But then you look at other people doing stuff, and you think, "I'm not even going to bother telling him because all I'm going to get is a mouthful of abuse."
Yeah.
So it's not. But I have intervened a couple of times, but probably about 50% of the incidents I've seen. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, young man. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. No problem.
Catch up with you in the near future, hopefully, Mucker.
Yeah. Right. Thank you very much for your time, Sean.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Cheers. Thanks.
God bless. Bye.
Bye.
Right.